Hi everyone, Wendy Taylor here, and I'm excited to be with you one more time. And I know usually we come on Thursday evening at 7:30, but I was out of town and felt that I'd try to make it tonight. So I hope some of you are watching. If you don't get it now, I'm sure you'll get it a little bit later. Well, I want to talk to you tonight about unwavering faith. I don't know, is there an area of your life where you struggle to trust God? Is there anything in your life that you just feel, this is one area I just can't trust God? Well, there's one area that I've always struggled with, and that is that I had a hard time trusting God with my children. I mean, I could trust Him for finances, when I was sick, all different things. But when it came to my children, it seemed like I felt I had to look after that, and I had to figure it out, and I had to be the one to provide for them and to make sure they were okay. And God has taught me some lessons over the years, and I'm going to share one little story with you. My son, this is a few years ago, he was traveling around Toronto area. He was on the 401 talking to me on the phone, as he often does, and I always get a little nervous when he's talking on the phone while he's driving. But this one day we're talking away, and all of a sudden I heard a crash. And I knew he was in an accident while I was talking to him on the phone. So I'm yelling, Brent, are you okay? Are you okay, Brent? Speak to me. And he never said anything. I didn't know if he was alive. I didn't know if he was seriously hurt. I didn't know where he was exactly. I knew he was on the 401 somewhere near Toronto, but I didn't know exactly. It was a very scary moment for me. And so I called his pastor in the Toronto area, and I just said, I want you to know Brent's been in an accident, and he's somewhere on the 401. I think just getting on the 401. Could you please find out where he is and what hospital they're taking him to? Meanwhile, he got on the phone, and he all of a sudden goes, "Hi, Mom." And I said, "Brent, are you okay?" He said, "Yes, I did crash into another car, and the police is walking towards my car. I think an ambulance is coming, but I don't know where I am." And he was just kind of in a daze. Well, this was very, very frightening for me, and not knowing where he was, how badly he was hurt. So after talking to his pastor on the phone, I said, "Please find out. My husband and I are jumping in the car right now. We're going to head to Toronto. We're going to try to find out where he is. We're going to visit the hospitals. I'll call you on my way." So we jumped in the car, and we were in Windsor. We had a 4-hour drive, and we headed out for Toronto. After about 2 hours on the road, the pastor called and said he called all the emergencies, and he found out where Brent was. And that's where we headed. We went to see him, and it ended up he just had a few stitches, and they released him. It wasn't anything really serious, but it was a scary, scary moment, not knowing if he was seriously hurt or what had really happened to him. Well, there were two ladies in the Bible that I so much respect, and that is because they had unwavering faith, and I want to talk to you about them tonight. The first one I want to talk about is Hannah. Hannah, I feel like I can identify with her a little bit because I couldn't have any children. Hannah couldn't have any children. And she would go to the temple, and she would sit on the step and just cry and beg God, "Please, God, give me a baby. Give me a son. I just promise that if you give me a son, I will give him back to you to serve you all the days of his life." Well, she would sit there crying, and one day the priest came out and saw her just crying uncontrollably, and he thought she was drunk. And she said, No, I'm not drunk. I am just weeping because I want a son, and I'm begging God to give me a child." Well, it wasn't long. God spoke to her heart and said, "You are going to have a baby." And she did. She had baby Samuel. Now, when Samuel was born, she didn't forget about her promise to God. What she did was she weaned him for 2 or 3 years, and after that time, she felt that it was time to take him to the temple to the priest. Now, talk about a step of faith. if you mothers out there that are watching this could imagine at 2 or 3 years old, taking your baby by the hand, taking your little suitcase in the other hand, and walking him up to the temple to drop him off with a priest that had a reputation for not being a godly man. He knew that his sons were having sex on the streets, on the sidewalk, and the steps of the temple, didn't do anything about it. He was not what you would call a godly man, even though he was a priest. And here she was, taking her little 2 or 3 year old by the hand, taking him to the temple, dropping him off for the priest. And when she did, she said, I promised God that I would give him back to God, and I am putting him in your care, and I'm leaving him here at the temple. She walked away, leaving her baby there. Now, ladies, if you're watching, I know you know this took a lot of faith, not only in just dropping her baby off, but leaving the baby with an ungodly man that has proven himself not to be a good father. How could a woman do that? I don't even, it's almost beyond what you can imagine. Well, I prayed about this and thought about it, and I think I know. The truth is that Hannah, no, she probably didn't have any faith in that priest. Everybody knew what kind of man he was. But she had her faith in God. She knew that it wasn't dependent on this priest to look after her child. God was going to keep his hand on her child. And because she trusted God, she could leave her baby with the priest. You know, I adopted my 2 children, and every birthday I would think of their parents, and I would say, oh, I'm so thankful that that mother gave that baby up, wanting a better home for that baby, and I hope we're giving that baby the home that it deserves. I did this for my son and my daughter. Every birthday especially, I would think of those birth parents that dropped their baby off so that we were able to adopt. Well, you know, there's one more mother that I really have a lot of respect for in the Bible, and her name was Jochebed. Now, this lady, when her baby was just a wee little thing, his name was Moses. What happened was the king made a ruling that every baby under the year of 2 years old of the Israelites was going to be killed, thrown in the river, killed in some way. And Jochebed, of course, like any mother, loved her little boy, and she thought, there's nobody that's killing my baby. And so I'm going to make a little boat for him out of a little floating bed that I could just put in the water and let him float out there and let his sister watch him. Now, I imagine the sister was around 10 years old, and I would imagine that in this river there were crocodiles, and it was not the safest place for any young 10-year-old, let alone a baby floating in a basket. But Jochebed had faith in God. It wasn't that she trusted her 10-year-old daughter so much or trusted the river. She trusted in God. So she was able to leave that precious little baby. Well, she put Moses in the basket, and then Miriam walked out, was walking around with this little guy in the basket, just floating around. And all of a sudden, there was a princess that was washing herself by the river, and she heard a baby cry. She sent her servants out to see what was in the basket. Excuse me. And she went, the little servant girl picked up the basket, and there is a little baby. Well, she brought the baby to the princess, and the princess saw Miriam out in the water, and Miriam said, Miss, if you don't mind, I'll find a mother that could nurse your baby for you. And the princess knew that it was a little Israelite baby, and she said, would you please do that? And Miriam took that baby, took the baby home, and for the next 2 or 3 years, Jochebed nursed her little baby, prayed for that baby, sang with that baby, and just probably talked to that baby about God and that he was going to be something great one day. Well, that baby certainly did grow up to be something great. That was Moses. And he's the one that God gave 10 commandments to. And he's the one that God would speak to. He would go to a mountain and God would come down and speak to Moses. What a man of God. Amazing. Well, you know, how did Jochebed ever trust to leave her baby with a princess after 3 years? How did she ever get to that point? She didn't trust the princess. She knew they were ungodly. They didn't even know God. She knew that she didn't know where her baby was going, what they would treat him like, but she trusted in God. And you know, I'm thinking as I'm sharing this tonight that there are mothers out there that are very scared for their children. You're afraid that maybe they're not following the direction that you taught them when they were growing up. Maybe they're in an ungodly atmosphere. Maybe they're not serving God today. But you know, God does not want us to look at everything around them. He wants us to keep our eyes focused on Him. He's the one that we can trust, even when we don't understand, even when it makes no sense to us. We can trust God. You know, there's a verse that I have stood on these last few years as we've gone through some tremendous trials. When my husband had his 2 heart attacks, 1 stroke 3 years ago, when my daughter passed away just 1 year ago, there's a verse that I've leaned on, and I want to share it with anybody watching. And it's, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. And I have stood on that verse, and I've said it over and over and over again. When life just didn't make sense and I didn't understand, what is God doing? I just felt like I've got to say that over and over. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And don't try to understand. Don't try to figure it out. Just trust Him. And you know, as I've done that, something miraculous has happened. God has placed a stronger faith in my heart that I am beginning to totally trust Him. Even when situations look impossible, my faith and my trust is truly in Him. For now I have a history I can look back on, and I can say He has been faithful over and over and over again, and I know I can trust Him. So I hope this little story tonight, this little message I gave you, will encourage somebody. And feel free to subscribe on YouTube, because all our little talks are on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel. Also, like it, share it. If you have a prayer request or something that you need faith for, feel free to share that, because I will definitely pray for you if you put a prayer request down. So I just want to leave it with you now, and I plan on being with you next Thursday night at about 7:30. So have an awesome week. Okay, bye-bye.